Thank you very much. Good morning. I am City Council Member Luis Vieira, Chairman of the HART Board of Directors. Please silence all electronic devices for the duration of the meeting. Welcome to the April 1st, 2024 Board of Directors regular meeting, which is now called to order. The meeting format is hybrid, with board members physically appearing at the HART Administrative Office here at 1201 East 7th Avenue, Florida Conference Room, and participating via communication media technology. Please, if you're able to do so, stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next is public comment. We have individuals who are pre-registered to give public comment. As a reminder, all public communications are only limited to 3 minutes. First individual is Mr. John Green. Sir, you are recognized to speak.
Hi, I'm John Green, Brandon, Florida. Before I get started, can I pass out these documents? They're from
Sure.
HART, so that you can follow along with my presentation. While they're doing that, I just want to introduce myself. I am a former HART driver. I am a former vice president of the union and acting president. And the purpose of me being here today is to speak on the drivers. I'm still attached to them. I want to thank HART over the COVID time for coming to pick up my mother-in-law, who is being transported to dialysis, who's since been transitioned. But I appreciate the service. But I am here to speak on HART drivers and the essential workers. Everything that you see in this packet is from HART. It is documented. In the first page, as I'm just going to get started because I know I got 3 minutes. You can see how much money HART has received over the COVID. And from my understanding, is that the drivers, they only got paid for straight time. If you go to the next page, you see Article 11. It speaks to the agreement between HART and the union. My main focus is MOUs between HART and the union itself. We don't have any MOUs saying that the drivers got paid for their time and a half during COVID. I highlighted some stuff in there, so this is the document for that. If you flip over, this is Article 11. You flip to the next page, I even attached Article 17, which talks about the essential workers over during COVID or a natural disaster. Now, the next page is signed for the former CEO, where she had given raises to the non-bargaining unit. And they got a raise of 3%. And this is dated for March 24, 22. But they got a raise for 3%. And then the next page, they got another raise for 5%. So that's an 8% raise total. And the drivers, ATU 1593, still didn't get their pay for time and a half. They was paid straight time, from my understanding. And still yet, no MOUs signed by HART nor the ATU. So if you go to the next page, we had sent the email to the commissioner for some information. And on the next, I'm just going past because I know I have 3 minutes. So if you want to further the conversation after this, we can. And this is what we got back from HART. Where HART decided to pay.
Thank you very much, sir. Unfortunately, we only limit it to, I'll tell you what, let you finish your sentence. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, HART decided to pay the employee, the bargaining unit, $1,500. And as you can see, it was signed at the bottom by HART, the council, and the commission.
Thank you very much, sir. And what I'll do, if I may, your time is done. I'm glad to meet with you after the HART meeting.
Yeah,
Mr.
there's no MOUs.
And your
or-
time is finished. Thank you very much.
for
But I'm
HART.
glad to meet with you after the meeting if you'd like and set up a meeting with my office. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, next we have, Mr. Marian Guisdala. Come forward, sir.
By the counter. Where is it?
Yes, just straight forward.
Forward?
Yes. yes,
Over
sir.
here?
Yes, we go.
There we
Here we
go.
go.
Super. Sit. Down. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Board. And the Chair of the ADA Accessibility Committee is here as well, and I'd like to greet him, Arizona Jenkins. My name is Marian Guisdala. I do sit on the ADA Accessibility Committee for HART. I'm also a proud member of the National Federation of the Blind of Florida, wearing our yellow shirts today. The great philosopher Yogi Berra once says that when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And I know that a lot of times people come before you, and I'm one of them who often complain about challenges that we are facing with HART. But I know that many times, too, you don't hear what the resolutions are, and sometimes we're not really sure if there was one. But I want to say that I am cautiously optimistic that we are starting to be heard. And we had a meeting, thank you, Mr. Chair, for hosting us here, and Mr. Drainville, and Mary Schock, and Scott Greenblatt, who's here as well, members of the National Federation of the Blind's local Tampa Bay chapter, met with Mr. Vieira and Mr. Drainville, as well as Kemley Green and Jackie Haldau. And I believe that we have come to that fork in the road. And again, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be moving forward. We've got a lot of progress that has been made, and a lot of progress that we have been promised will be made. And I am here to express my gratitude for that meeting, and also to encourage everyone to continue this path and to take that fork in the road along with us to something bigger and better for HART. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you very much. Thank you. And next we have Mr. Charles Loeb.
Nice to see you again.
Hey, good to see you again.
Should I get my address as well?
No, you're fine. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I came to kind of battle for my program on transportations for some ideas for improvements. I have several ideas. Number one, to have the businesses have special discounts for Flamingo Pass users. And on the inside bus advertising, to have special advertisers for a bus that are exclusive for bus riders. Secondly, I was thinking about alternate local and express buses on the same route. Well, for an example would be, for those of you who remember the 2 and the 400, have fewer stops on the 400 and more stops on the 2. So on one hand, people can get to places faster who want to go faster. And on the other hand, so people can get more access and don't have to walk as far to certain bus stops. Number 3, if the county approved some charity donations to various charities, I was thinking they also should approve free monthly bus passes to the workers who are unpaid volunteers. This is only fair. To show more than a mere appreciation for that. I also have 2 other reminders for you all today. The first one is for the members of the TPO. Number 1 is that the funding formula that's used for fund transportation issues, including transit, is not the same under all administrations. I've been talking to people over at FDOT like Kenneth Madden and Michael Pokers, among others, and I have their numbers and all that, and that and the long and the short of it is, right now it's 80, 10, and 10, meaning that if Republicans are elected and at the end of the year, chances are the funding formula won't be that good. So if you, it would be time to go on the boat, get Polk County. If you want to have transportation between Tampa and Orlando, get on the boat, get on board, and get it while maybe it's good, while it's a little bit easier to do. And finally, the other reminder, especially with you being the first day of these things with the bingo passes for the kids, is a reminder that one way or another, unless you already have dealt with them, that you should deal with the summer passes for the kids, whether you want to do them or don't do it, to be fair to the parents and to be fair to the staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you. Next is Mr. Scott Greenblatt.
Turn right. And now right, and here's the podium. Yep.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for having this meeting, for my ability to, speak to you guys today. I wanted to speak on behalf of Vision Impaired Persons National Federation of the Blind and compliment HART for its hard work with the application process that we've been going through. I think the whole system now is accessible. I haven't checked the website to make sure it's there, but certainly the application for HART Plus membership is accessible now, and that's an extraordinary improvement, an extraordinary accomplishment that we've all gotten through together, and I want to thank you for that. I also wanted to mention that the move-it tickets that are available for HART Plus customers to use paratransit services are now accepted by Yellow Cab and by extension to Uber, when they have to pick up for Yellow Cab. And that's wonderful because it allows riders not to have to be forced to carry cash or get, physical tickets or whatever. Everything becomes much more accessible, and it makes our world a lot easier to deal with. So I just wanted to thank you all for the progress that we've made, and I look forward to a lot of progress going forward with improvements that can be made to the system and things we can do together to make our transportation better. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else here for public comment? Okay, there being none, we'll go forward with the meeting. We always appreciate everybody's thoughts and contributions on public comment and everything. Thank you very much. Okay, next, if I may, is approval of the minutes. Next agenda item is approval of the minutes, meeting minutes from the February 5th, 2024 Board of Directors regular meeting and the February 19th, 2024 Board of Directors workshop. May I please have a motion to approve both sets of minutes? We have a motion by Councilman Schisler, second, I believe, by Board Member Knight. Roll call, please.
Director Cepeda? Director Cameron Cepeda?
Yes.
Director Hartfield?
Yes.
Director Henderson? Director King?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Director Knight?
Yes.
Director Mechanic?
Yes.
Director Myers?
Yes.
Director Owen?
Yes.
Director Schisler?
Yes.
Chair Vieira?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Wolstel?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, HART Board. Next, we have the consent agenda, and the Litigation and Claims Committee met on February 26, 2024, and recommended approval for action items for action item 4A, the HART Joint Strategic Planning and External Relations and Revenue Alternatives Ad Hoc Committee met on March 18, 2024, and recommended approval for action item 4B, and the HART Finance and Audit Committee met on March 18, 2024, and recommended approval for action items 4C and 4D. Are there any questions to staff about these aforementioned consent agenda items? Okay, and there being apparently none, may I please have a motion to approve? We have a motion for approval by County Commissioner
Second.
Myers, seconded by Council Member Schisler. Roll call, please.
Director Cameron Cepeda?
Yes.
Director Hartfield?
Yes.
Director Henderson?
Yes.
Director King?
Yes.
Director Knight?
Yes.
Director Mechanic?
Yes.
Director Myers?
Yes.
Director Owen?
Yes.
Director Schisler?
Yes.
Director Chair Vieira?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Wolstel?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And by the way, for the folks appearing virtually, if you wish to speak, just if you know how to, put that little virtual hand up. And if I don't see it for any reason, please feel free to say, hey, get my attention, because sometimes I'm bad at that. Okay, next are presentations. The first presentation is from Holland and Knight on the state and federal legislative update and overview of priorities. With us today in the boardroom is Mr. Mark Delegal, member of the team, and we also have Lisa Barkovic joining us remotely. You are recognized to present. How you doing, sir?
Good morning. Well, I think Lisa's going to start us out.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm part of the federal team. Also on the call today, too, is my colleague, Jeff Booth, with Booth Transit Consulting. We're going to kick off with a little bit of a federal update. We are part of the process of the year where Congress actually just completed its work on the FY24 appropriation bills. So right before they broke for the spring break recess, Congress passed a six-bill omnibus appropriations bill that included funding for Homeland, Defense, State and Foreign Ops, Labor, HHS, and Education legislative branch funding. Our Transportation HUD appropriations bill had been completed about 3 weeks beforehand. So the good news here is we have finally finished our work on FY24, and we are now focusing our attention on FY25 appropriations. And so one of the places where we are looking to for guidance on what are HART's priorities is looking at the TPO, TIP priorities, that's Transportation Improvement Plan. Next slide. Okay, so here we have HART's TPO priorities. Right at the top of the list, we see the heavy maintenance facility. So this has become a huge priority for not only the federal team, but for the state team, which you'll hear from Mark in a little bit, kind of discussing what are we doing to help HART attain federal funding to support these projects. Also on this list, we're looking at bus replacements, radio system placements. Of course, this is just a guide for us to use. There's lots of other things that we're trying to do, too, in the background. Next slide. One of the reasons why we look towards the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, for guidance is you'll see that when we are working on federal grant opportunities, as well as community project funding, that's formerly called earmarks, these are the types of things that we have to answer on these forms and grant applications that we fill out. We're looking for that demonstration of community support. We are looking for we're asked to point out where on the TIP is this project going to be funded and what are the process. This really helps Congress and the federal government understand what our priorities are, and so it's a very helpful starting point for us on projects. We're going to take a slight detour, and I'm going to get back to Mark in the room to kind of give the state legislative update because what happens at the state also kind of guides us at the federal level. Mark?
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning again. I'm Mark Delegal, and thank you for allowing us to represent HART. It's really an honor. So I wanted to give a brief update on the legislative session. I'll start with the surtax revenue. Just to highlight that we had about $570 million of collected dollars plus interest. And the legislature, through both the General Appropriations Act as well as what's called the implementing bill, and then all through a conforming bill, did the following. So about $257 million has been set aside. That's about 45% of the overall funds for road resurfacing projects in Hillsborough County. The projects, there'll be a list of them. It'll go back to the state for final approval. The county is going to be charged with managing those road resurfacing projects. $171 million, about 30% of the dollars, is set aside into a fund for refund claims. There'll be a process, there'll be public notice. Folks will be allowed to make a claim. The deadline for filing those claims is the 31st of this year. And any amounts not refunded will fall into the final bucket, and that is sales tax relief. So beginning in January of 2025, $162 million plus some interest around $19 million plus any unspent funds from the refund bucket. They will be available for a sales tax holiday, so to speak, or relief throughout Hillsborough County. The final thing I just wanted to point out is that this is the result of a negotiated settlement that took place, and then the legislature adopted this. It has to go back for court approval, but this entire process has essentially been codified in Florida law permanently. So in the event there is ever a situation like a sales tax, surtax that has been approved that is subsequently declared unconstitutional, there'll be a process in place. And that's kind of a remarkable thing, so I thought I would point that out. The next thing is there is annually what's called an FDOT package, a Florida Department of Transportation package. It had a number of things in it. Let me speak specifically as to what was in there for public transit. Now, let me flip to the next slide. So number one, no transit provider can spend more than 20% above the statewide average on administrative costs. HART is very efficient, so that is not going to impair our operations. Number two, what I call transparency. On the website of HART, you have to put a line item budget, executive salaries, ridership and performance metrics, and hopefully never any gifts accepted by HART for purposes of awarding a contract. That should never happen, but it's the law. Next is a requirement that if our administrative expenses increase by more than 5% in a year, that has to be approved by the State Department. Flipping to the next page, you'll recall that in the 2023 legislative session, there were prohibitions against mask and vaccine mandates on all businesses for that matter, but also on public entities. This language in the bill this year in the FDOT package says if a transit agency violates that, those funds are going to be withheld by the state. The next item is a lane repurposing component. Anytime a lane is repurposed, it requires a 2/3 vote of this board or any transit agency. Next, eminent domain. If you were to exercise your powers of eminent domain, it requires a public meeting prior to that. Next, bus wraps. If the state of Florida gives you FDOT money, the bus wrap itself has to be your logo, a state logo, a state PSA. It cannot be any kind of other messaging. You will be able to continue to sell advertising as you have done in the past for any number of people who purchase that. But if it's state dollars, there's a limitation. And then last is window tinting on the buses. It has to comply with the window tinting requirements of cars that you and I have. Let me go on to mention two other bills and then our plans for the summer and fall. So I wanted to point out one other transit bill that had a piece in it dealing with public transit. And by the way, I should have mentioned this at the outset. Any questions at any time, please feel free to interrupt me. I'm not trying to dominate. I'm just trying to go quickly. There's a new law, a new limit that FDOT cannot spend more than 20% of the fuel tax and motor vehicle license fees that it collects, which is the primary source of its funding on public transit. That now is less than 10%, so it should not impact anything. And last, it has come up as a question, so I thought I'd go ahead and preempt that and address it. There is a bill, it's got quite a bit of notoriety about public camping and public sleeping. The provisions of that bill, and the question was, do we have issues with respect to our bus stops or little bus pavilions about public camping and public sleeping? The law only applies to cities and counties governments. So we are not that. So we do not have an issue with that. The last slide I wanted to go over is a list, well, two other slides, I apologize. Some bills that did not pass. So number one, there was a bill seeking to raise the sovereign immunity limits in Florida. That bill is an annual bill and it didn't pass this year, but it continues to get closer, so we'll continue to monitor that. The second item on the list is in the House tax package, There was a requirement that any surtax that existed had to be reauthorized every 10 years rather than 30. That piece did not make the final day. Next, there was a bill dealing with the Pinellas bus system, and that bill did not pass. And then last, there was a bill that would have prohibited us from, well, put it this way, it would have required us to accept cash on the bus. That bill, and all businesses were required to accept cash, and that bill did not pass. Last, I wanted to outline, we've worked really close with the team, Lena and Josh, and also with Scott, about our plans for the summer. And so let me highlight those to you. We have a unique opportunity this coming year. In the legislative process, two of the most influential legislators will be the chairman of the House and the Senate Appropriations Committee. So this next session and the next, for that matter, the next two sessions, the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee will be from Hillsborough County. That's Representative McClure. On the Senate side, the chairman will be Senator Hooper. Now, while he doesn't have jurisdiction area in Hillsborough County, he's certainly a neighbor of the Tampa Bay area. So we've got two folks that will be influential right here from our own backyard. In addition, Representative Coster, Senator Burgess, Senator Collins, and Senator Roussan have been players in the public transit issue. Particularly Representative Coster filed an appropriation request for HART this year. Senator Burgess and Senator Collins have been active with us, and we will continue to develop their support and seek funding, and also any other legislative options that would come along. We'll be closely working with them. Number two, we want to continue to bring legislators out to the heavy maintenance facility, those who have not seen it. In the fall, we're going to, for you, develop some recommendations or seek input and come up with a legislative program, bring that back to you, have you approve it, and then hopefully Mr. Drainville will get an opportunity to present that to the delegation at its annual legislative delegation meeting prior to going to Tallahassee, and seek the endorsement of the delegation. And then last, we're going to continue to focus on demonstrating the importance of HART and the services we provide to our community, and obviously point out the improved fiscal operations, transparency, and just good governance that HART has seen in the last year or so. Any questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you. Any questions from the board? Go ahead, sir.
Just wanted to make one point on the legal fees.
Yes.
Where it says 170 million. I don't want anybody, particularly the media, to misrepresent the fact that in there, less than or about 1% of that is going to go towards legal fees. Is that not correct, that was protected? So I don't want it to be portrayed that they're going to get $170 million of legal fees, because that was the first. It's like about 6 to 7 million total that they could get.
You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
So out of the $171 million, there's going to be a process, and we would expect it to happen anytime soon. The lawyers that represented the plaintiffs are going to develop what's called a fee petition. They're going to present it to the court. What that means is they're going to justify the number of hours that they spent, proposed hourly rate. The judge will go through all that, and then he will make an award. It will not be, just for absolute clarity, it will not be $171 million or anything close to that. That's just out of that bucket of money. The lawyers will be paid, but most of the money is going to be spent on the refund claim process, and then any monies that are not spent on the refund claim process will revert to the sales tax.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Owen, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. This is a really
Yes, sir.
good lawyer standing up here before us right now.
Thank you.
It was interesting what you had mentioned on the legislation dealing with camping or tent cities and things like that. You had mentioned that we don't have the right to enforce that as HART, right? That's going to be the cities do, you said. What about the unincorporated areas? How does that work for enforcing that type of law?
Thank you for the question, and I don't want to presume to be the county's lawyer, but it's my understanding that the law as it is written applies only to cities and counties.
Right.
And that it's, if not other governmental entities.
Right,
So
okay.
in an unincorporated area, the county is going to.
Through the
yes.
share, okay, that would make sense, okay, great. And you had mentioned a deadline on there for the refund too. You said the 31st, and you didn't give the month, I'm just curious.
December.
December, so the end of the year,
Yes.
basically, yes,
Yes.
okay, great.
So there'll be a process to solicit claims, and the people will
Mm-hmm.
have, or businesses will have until the December 31st.
December 31st,
To make a filing for the claim.
Very good, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anybody virtually?
Chairman,
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, it's George Williams. I did thank you for the clarification on the legal fees. When I saw the $171 million, I'm curious as to how that was going to be awarded, so I appreciate the clarification there. I do want to call out that the Hillsborough County Transit, from our standpoint, I don't see additional dollars going to HART, and it's going to be just very, very important for us to have governance and have best-in-class performance so we can reestablish or reset our baseline and benchmark so that people see that there is a need. I know that we have support for the heavy maintenance building, and we're going to need even more dollars as we move forward, but our performance and how we're viewed and our image and so forth has to be reset so that we could establish our needs as we move forward, and we have to have the performance and the status in order to I would say ask for those additional dollars or start to reset and say what our needs are, because they are not being fulfilled based on what I've heard in this message. And but we are appreciative of the heavy maintenance dollars.
Do we want to continue some of the slides that we had to talk about the funding strategy for the heavy maintenance facility?
Is there more of the presentation, or?
I'm sorry, yes, there is from the federal standpoint, yes. I
Oh,
was just-
by all means. Okay, I thought, okay, no, so go ahead, finish your
Yeah,
presentation,
so
please.
That's it from the state perspective, and I'll kick it back to Lisa if that's okay.
And, let me, if I may, comment, I wouldn't want to wait for everybody, just a couple of things. I did want to pay special attention to the sovereign immunity issue. I was talking with some of the folks who were pushing that issue, and I mean, my view is, for HART and for any municipality, raising that limit up to $500,000 to $600,000 is going to be very chaotic for local government. It's going to be terrible. Right now, with the cap, I think, being at $200,000 per claim, or per person, $300,000 per claim, there's a good argument for lifting it some, but up to that level, you're going to put every single claim at such a, high, quote-unquote, policy limits. It's not policy limits, that it's just going to result in more litigation, in my opinion. So for whatever that's worth, and again, with the settlement that you talked about, sure, that's something that we know what the political realities are, and obviously there's going to be tax relief, and there's obviously a rational basis for that. I'm glad to see that a lot was put in there for transportation projects in Hillsborough County, and I know that we're looking forward to some of that well-deserved relief for our folks here in Hillsborough County. So, but just again, thank you so much, and go ahead with the federal.
Lisa, I'm ready for you.
Yeah. So just to follow up on the questions with regards to getting federal funding, this was just a quick snapshot of federal funding grant opportunities. So HART did submit at the end of February a $23 million grant application in support of the heavy maintenance facility phase 1 part of the project. There will be $1.8 billion available in funding. So this is a little bit less than they had in the last round of funding, but nonetheless, we should be in good shape here. Awards are going to be announced by June 27th. And we have some meetings scheduled with U.S. DOT leadership next week to talk about the project and advocate for it. The other two opportunities are in process right now, the bus and bus facilities grant application, as well as FTA low to no emissions funding, which also can be used for facilities. And those are due at the end of the month, April 25th, and they'll be announced by July 9th. Can I please? This was just how we talked about the heavy maintenance facility funding strategy, where we're going after the RAISE grant program. This was formerly known as the Tiger and Build grants and bus facilities and Low No. And, you know, there's just different caveats to each of these programs in terms of, like, the RAISE grant, we're capped at a $25 million award, but the bus facilities and Low No can be larger than the 25 million. So we're really trying to be creative in the strategy and moving forward the different phases. Next slide. So this is just how we're looking at our advocacy and the different timeframes. So I mentioned next week when Mr. Drainville is in Washington, we're going to be meeting with the Assistant Secretary for Transportation Policy, Mr. Christopher Coos. He is kind of, you know, part of the senior review team, an instrumental person to be meeting with. But as we kind of work our way out to that June 27th award announcement, we'll be having our members of the congressional delegation do outreach. Any additional times that if any of you are going to be in Washington, we'd love to host you and also have you go meet with the folks with USDOT to help that relationship building as well as advocacy for this meeting. And then just kind of looking ahead in the next slide, leveraging the federal landscape. There are going to be lots of good opportunities where members of the administration will be in Washington, D.C. I'm sorry, they will be in Hillsborough. So, for example, NACO will be having their annual fly-in in Tampa, July 12th through 15th. So you'll have folks from the administration that will be in Tampa, and so we're going to be looking to kind of leverage that time for them to maybe possibly come and tour the facility and meet with you all while they're having to come and visit for NACO. The same is going to be said for the National League of Cities annual meeting. That's in Tampa in November 13th through 16th. And then whenever Congress has their district work periods, like August is a big one, we would love to piggyback on some of the state rep visits and have you all attend. Jeff, anything else that you would like to add?
Nothing that I can think of. Thanks, Lisa.
So that's it. Questions?
Okay,
Well,
great.
one last thing, just for the sake of HART, to answer, and this is a question Loretta asked me. We expect the apportionment of loans to be done sometime this week. And what that means is that the balance of the FY24 money will be released to HART. We expect that to happen sometime this week.
Thank you very much, folks. We appreciate you. Any further questions or comments from HART board members?
Chairman, I'm just very encouraged with the additional page of information. So thank you.
Okay.
And great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, thank you very much. Next, the second presentation is our Transportation Improvement Project Overview with the Tampa Arterial Bus Rapid Transit and Circulator presentation from Mr. Justin Willits, Director of Planning and Scheduling for HART. Sir, you may go. You're recognized.
Thank you very much. Director of Planning and Scheduling, Justin Willits. Morning, board members, Mr. Drainville, council. I'm just going to walk you through two of the items that you were referenced in the previous presentation in reference to service-related items that were included in the TIP this year. The Tampa Arterial BRT and the City of Tampa Circulator. These two items, numbers 5 and 8, were approved in February, and they're two of the 8 items that were sent for the TPO list. A little bit of history here. This project's been ongoing for many years, even probably predating this slide. But we received a FDOT grant for $2.5 million to plan and design this project. Phase 1 through 2019-2020 determined a recommended alignment that was approved by the board. And then moved into Phase 2A, which we refined there were basically two big alternatives. One was a very high capital investment with a median guideway on several segments of the corridor, including Fowler. And given the uncertainty in our financial situation, then we decided to advance the lower cost alternative, which was a more modest approach to the BRT project. And that was advanced in late 2022, and we've been working on that in the years since. As of right now, we are wrapping up that design work by the end of FDOT's fiscal year. That's when the grant will run out, and we are going to have probably about a 60% design that would be further refined if we ever find capital funding to fully design and construct the project. Just a quick overview. Like I said, multi-jurisdiction collaboration between HART, FDOT, and the City of Tampa. This is a service that would connect downtown to USF. This has long been identified as the #1 transit market in the Tampa Bay region. Most of the major transit projects that have been entertained by this body and the city, and even regionally from T-BARTA, have been connecting the downtown with the USF area. And it would go up Florida Avenue, turning on Linebaugh over to Nebraska, and then Fowler and Bruceby Downs to connect to the university area. Long story short is we're trying to reduce travel time. Our existing service during the heaviest traffic periods, it's that northbound afternoon rush hour, can be sometimes up to 80 minutes for our service. This would reduce that travel time to probably about 35 to 40 minutes, depending on the level of investment on the corridor, which has to do with signal priority and how much of the actual lane would be dedicated to exclusively to transit. So those numbers fluctuate based on the actual implementation. We submitted a grant for reconnecting communities and the neighborhood access. We did not get that grant, so we're going to have a debrief with the feds on what was good, what was bad, and hopefully get another crack at that next year. This was a very unique opportunity. It was 100% funding. Most of the grants we pursue, as you know, do require some local commitment for capital dollars. This was 100% funding. What we might want to do is sweeten that deal with a small percentage of matching dollars next time to improve our chances. But the one commitment we did show was a funded operation, because that corridor does serve one of our most frequent routes, the highest ridership. So we do have operating dollars associated with the existing service that we can kind of stretch to make it even better should we be able to find the matching grant. And just a little bit of background here. The City of Tampa streetcar overlaps with this project, the City of Tampa streetcar extension project, I should say, in the southern end. And for many years of planning, that project was supposed to be funded and constructed first. So we were going to benefit from the dedicated lane of the streetcar on Florida and Tampa. That kind of changed. That project hasn't been advanced as much as this one has at this point. So that's been part of the coordination with the city that gets pretty interesting from a project design perspective. But part of what the city and HART we've been working on is funding a short-term circulator as an interim streetcar service, which is the north-south piece there from the Whiting Street station at the Fort Brooke Garage up to Palm Avenue in the Armature Works area. That basically overlaps with that extension. So we're kind of working with the city to say, hey, let's start operating this now. When you build your project, the streetcar extension would replace this circulator service to Palm. And based on the refinements that we've done as the transit agency, we've extended this route over to basically where we are sitting today to close the loop of the streetcar, which is kind of the long-term vision that 30 years ago was really what was supposed to happen. And that extension only does part of that, but the circulator service would complete the loop as an interim step. Both of these were included on the tip to make sure that we have access to as many different funding opportunities as possible. And we're still working with the city for the operating funding. They've got a partial commitment of $400,000 for 2 years. We needed more operating dollars committed to deliver that service. $1.2 million per year is the estimate. And we need it for a little bit longer than 2 years to make sure that we can operate it and see through at least 3 years before we can really evaluate its success based on the ridership and that sort of thing. And that's the end of my presentation. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments from board members? I do, and making sure no one else. When you say funds from the city, is that the City of Tampa or CRA?
Well, it's kind of whatever you would
whatever
prefer.
it is. Yeah.
But we've provided estimates to the city staff based on how much could be funded by the CRAs, given their the CRA plans dictate what it can be spent on. So we're waiting for the city's legal to basically say, this one's good, this one isn't. And then we would have a delta that could be made up in some other fashion
Yeah.
Maybe by that 400,000 per year that I believe is coming from parking revenue. That's partially committed. So it probably is going to be a mixed bag of different funding based on what the CRA plans allow, what the appetite is of council to fund
Yeah.
the gap, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I know a lot of our CRAs, I mean, there's controversy in some, there's controversy, no controversy in others. I know downtown CRA, a lot of the funding goes to a lot of cultural institutions right now, and now we're starting to talk about the streetcar more and more, which is great. But that's obviously important. And, you talk about BRT, you talk about that versus the streetcar. I think that we should start off with a premise that they're both great projects. For me, the BRT or the streetcar is an A-. The BRT is an A in terms of necessity or how it would apply into the community. But they're both great wins, and they're both wonderful. And I think that the city's priority is obviously the streetcar. Glad to work with them through HART on that. And that's going to be a great win for the community. I just want to make sure, and I know you agree with this, that BRT doesn't get set aside whenever it comes to the city's projection and their vision, because that is so important for a corridor that is so ignored. The University of South Florida, the University area, the Fowler area, an area that has so much untapped potential, and this is, part of it. Obviously, whenever it comes to seeking grants, a lack of matching money disadvantages us, but hopefully we can, stretch that single into a home run soon. So we'll see what happens. But thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next presentation is from the heavy maintenance facility from Mr. Dan Rodriguez, the project manager. Sir, you may go.
Good morning, Chair Vieira, directors, Mr. Drainville. Dan Rodriguez, project manager with the HART Project Management Office. I'm here this morning to give an update on the heavy maintenance facility. In my update, I will go over the campus history, the project look back, and the project plan, and the next steps. In the beginning, what we call now the HM facility was built in 1979 as a trucking facility. It was then purchased in 1981 by HART. It served the needs of a newly formed transit authority, but the bus bays and the layout of the facility and campus were originally built for trucks and not buses. As the system grew and the layout of the facility, both internally and on campus, became more and more inefficient, changes in technology such as transition to CNG, fleet brought additional challenges. Those of vehicles saved on operating costs and capital costs, the maintenance of the facility, the vehicles became an increasing problem. The existing HM roof became an issue with the new CNG buses, causing inefficiencies where several bus bays could not accommodate the new bus height. As the CNG fleet increased, so did this problem. Since the facility was built in the 70s, the original development was not required to mitigate for stormwater created by the increased impervious surfaces. Additional developments surrounding the facility, as well as the road and interstate improvements, then made the stormwater, which was an issue to be a bad situation, increasingly worse. In 2012, it became apparent that the facility's age and the heavy use was taking a toll. Staff then looking at the possibility of renovating the facility. Here's a high-level timeline of the events since 2012 that looked at ways to fix the HM building over the years. In 2012, HART applied for grants to help renovate its then 33-year-old facility. Once the funds were released, HART had a consultant review the entire HM building and provide a scope of work as well as an order of magnitude to renovate the building. In 2017, HART set out a proposal for the renovation of the HM building. The successful firm provided a $15 million proposal to renovate the building. As part of their proposal was a value engineering report. It was then, since it had been several years from the review, since it was done, the VE portion of the proposal stated that HART would be making a big investment in a building that's well past its youthful life to only gain a number of years for its effort. And the new facility could be built for $30 to $35 million. In 2008, the thought of a passage of a referendum, HART proceeded to go forward with a design-build contract for the new facility to include the campus-wide improvements, including, most importantly, the stormwater problem. Upon the passage of the referendum in 2018, it was full steam ahead in complete renovation of the property. Of course, this was only to be done within our current fence line and maintaining service. The referendum was unfortunately challenged in various courts, so while awaiting the decision, staff and the design-build consultant continued to lay out various campus designs. Unfortunately, due to the numerous changes in the scope and the new size of the project, HART had to cancel that contract with the design-build consultant. The plan was to resolicit with a contract better geared to design and build the entire campus, not just the HM facility. In 2012, HART staff reached out to Hillsborough County School Board to discuss the possibility of obtaining their underutilized facility in order to give HART additional space to build while continuing to operate and service our patrons. In 2021, as well as we know, the story of the referendum did not end in HART's favor. This was a crushing blow made staff reconsider new funding opportunities as a new phased approach to getting the overall project done in affordable pieces. In 2023, HART Board awarded a contract to CDM Smith to review our past steps and lay out a path to the future with updated project costs. In our last board meeting, it was asked what attributed the change in costs. Here's just a quick snapshot of what the last 4 years since the pandemic has done to our estimates. As you will see, in 2020, 2021, 2022, building materials such as steel, concrete, lumber jumped to unprecedented heights during this time. And now you also compound those material costs with actual costs of labor that has spiked as well during the same time period. In order to achieve the full campus layout, it had to be phased into manageable and more affordable phases. This will not only help with the funding of these phases, but also help maintain operations on this property. Though it may be necessary to relocate some buses and employee parking to accommodate construction and their team and their layouts during this time and various phases. Shown here are some estimates from phase 1 and 2 and are strictly high-level estimates for the budgeting purposes. Once in design, more accurate estimates will zero in on the actual cost depending on the implementation of design process and its completion during the various stages of each phase. CDM Smith, as part of their scope of services, provided staff a phased approach to completing the full campus build-out. The preferred alternative shows including obtaining the adjacent school board property shown in the yellow dashed line. With the emphasis on the most urgent need, phase 1 and 2 specifically addressed replacing the HM facility, while also consolidating the heavy and preventive maintenance buildings, addressing the stormwater issues on campus, and rehabilitating bus, van, and employee parking areas. Phase 1 and 2 not only address HART's immediate needs and its current service levels, but it also allows to maximize our campus and with the capacity of expanded service in the future in order to what improves the most to us and what is our rider and employee safety. Next steps, which is under phase 1 of the full campus plan. Revisit discussions with the school board and their willingness to allow HART to acquire their property. 2, reach out to our partner agencies, City of Tampa, FDOT, on how to alleviate the flooding issues on our campus, from the sheet flow from the north, as well as the backup of water trying to get out to McKay Bay. 3, to begin on the design of the service lane facility to bring both the fuel lanes and the vehicle and bus wash. Here's what we currently have underway. We have initiated talks with the school board and are doing an initial appraisal of their property, issued task orders to our engineering consultants to assist with a stormwater assessment, as well as working with the FTA environmental clearance. With help from FDOT, WSP was leading the RAISE grant development, which was due on 28th of February, as shown on the slide. The ask on the RAISE grant, as well as the match, is $29.2 million, which will help us complete phase 1 items. Staff is also working on the LONO and bus facility grants, which are due shortly. For the record, I would like to take a moment to say on behalf of the PMO and the HART staff, I would like to thank Mr. Drainville, Chair Vieira, and the members of this board for their leadership in moving this project forward and continuing the effort to fully fund this project. Please keep the pressure on. With that said, for your information, monthly updates on this project will continue to be included in the monthly board report. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. We appreciate you, sir. Any questions or comments from anyone? Okay. We appreciate you. I will say something, which is, for me, we appreciate the folks. I know we've talked to in the federal level trying to get help with Congresswoman Castor, Congresswoman Lee, and I know what and they've, been, I think, positive in their responses, and we appreciate their work and leadership. And I know in the state government level, State Senator Jay Collins, State Representative Tracy Coster have also, tried to help us here with a maintenance facility. For me, it's going out there. I've told folks that I want to bring as many state representatives and senators as we can out there, because if they go out there, they see the flooding that you saw in those photographs, and then they meet the workers, the mechanics, the machinists, et cetera, the folks who are out there. It's just about respect for these folks and giving them the respect and dignity they deserve, and to work in a place that if it rains for 10 minutes, it doesn't flood. That's it. I mean, that's not, you're not asking for luxury,
Yes,
so we appreciate everybody's help in trying to get dignity for these folks out there, because it's, but we got to get it done. But we appreciate your commitment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Next, we move to our Chief Executive Officer's report. Sir.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, board members. As reported earlier by the legislative support team, HART submitted an application for the federal discretionary funding for the HM facility. Staff is also working on grant applications for low-no admissions program, and this would fund the replacement of our CNG fleet, and looking for additional funding for the HM facility through Bus and Bus Facilities Grant. Staff held conversations with officers of Congresswoman Castor and Lee to discuss projects eligible for funding under the Community Projects Program. A quick update and timeline on the December 22 community project funding. And this is announced by Representative Castor, requested by Commissioner Myers. Final FTA application was submitted on March 14th, 2024. FTA certifications and insurances were completed on March 27th. FTA will complete the application review and submit to the Department of Labor on April 4th. Department of Labor completes the review and returns to the FTA on May 4th. And on May 6th, the FTA awards the grant, and on May 8th, the grant will be executed. Update on District 3 in the last 2 years, we purchased 68 bus shelters. 39 were allotted to District 3, 37 of which have been installed. 2 are pending construction. 22 of them were replacements, and 17 were actually new locations. Between April 7th through the 9th, I'll be traveling to D.C. with a dual purpose: to attend the American Public Transportation Association's legislative conference and to have meetings with the congressional delegation and Federal Transit Administration staff. On March 22nd, Governor Ron DeSantis signed legislation updating a law implementing last year's barring certain public sector unions from automatically deducting dues from workers' paychecks and requiring a higher threshold of union participation to remain certified. The bill, SB 1746, exempts emergency medical technicians, 911 operators, and mass transit workers from last year's law, which requires 60% of workers to be union members in order to the union to remain certified. This has a significant impact on HART, among other Florida public transit agencies, as it would remove obstacles accessing FTA grant applications. The April markup, service changes with the new markup are scheduled for April 14th. The objectives are to improve service reliability, on-time performance, adjust frequency on the route to improve reliability, and create better connections and transfers. Over the past few months, HART staff has been working with the Hillsborough County Public Schools on the reintroduction of fares for students. Starting today, April 1st, HART riders 18 and under must pay youth fare, $2 for a day pass, $32.50 for the entire month. Riders 5 and under remain free with a parent or guardian. Eligible riders must register for the HART Youth Pass by bringing a valid form of identification to the customer service windows at the Marion Transit Center or the UATC during the business hours. Youth Pass will be available via the Flamingo Fares mobile app, smart card, and by showing student ID when paying with cash on board. The HART team will be out in the Hillsborough County schools over the next few weeks, helping get the word out. On the finance side, HART's external auditor, Cherry Beckett, continues fieldwork with an anticipated completion for the audit on April 8th. The auditors will present to the Finance and Audit Committee on April 15th, and the full Board of Directors on May 6th. HART's Budget and Grants staff kicked off the FY25 budget development process with HART's leadership on March 4th. The plan is to complete the proposed FY25 operating budget and FY25 through FY29 five-year capital plan and present initially to the Finance and Audit Committee on May 20th. The presentation during the Finance and Audit Committee will include a discussion of the FY25 budget development calendar. In honor of Transit Workers Appreciation Day on March 18th, we expressed our gratitude to our hardworking staff by distributing brand-new HART backpacks, courtesy of the partners at Cigna. This gesture underscores our appreciation for their unwavering dedication in ensuring the seamless operation of our transit services, from driving vehicles to providing customer support. As we celebrate Transit Worker Appreciation Day, we extend our heartfelt thanks to all employees for their commitment, resilience, and invaluable contributions to keeping our community moving forward. The 2024 Tampa Bay Regional Rodeo for Tampa Bay Area Transit Agencies, which included Polk, Pasco, Pinellas, Manatee, Sarasota, and Hillsborough, was held at MCAT Sunday, March 10th. The HART team had a great time at the Tampa Bay Rodeo with local transit peers. We want to congratulate all the staff who participated in the event. Thanks to our hosts at MCAT, and special shout out to our bus operator, Valerio Ramos, for placing 3rd overall, and van operator, Teacher Starling, for placing 5th overall. Both now moved onto the state rodeo, which will be held in Jacksonville, Florida next month. HART participated in the Health and Wellness Fair hosted by Hillsborough County Commissioner Gwen Myers as a part of the celebration to Women's History Month. The expo was free to the public to educate our community on health and wellness and become familiar with the local resources available to them. The Safety Department hosted its first annual Safety Symposium. This is a safety event, and HART was invited various agencies to deliver training and resources to our staff. The TSA, OSHA, Fire Rescue, and local law enforcement, to name a few. The symposium is aimed at helping our staff understand the importance of being able to recognize a threat and what is the proper response. We are also able to bridge the understanding gap between first responders and what we do here at HART. If we better understand what first responders do, we can assist better and vice versa. The Safety Department is also currently collaborating with the Office of Emergency Management, Hillsborough County Public Schools, Sunshine Line, and various other county departments to enhance and revise the hurricane emergency plan for this hurricane season. The working group will be studying our plans and updating as needed. This is a great opportunity to get new stakeholders in the county up to speed on plans that should, unfortunately, storm events occur. A continuing project to be complete April 1st prior to the hurricane season. And lastly, please join me for a big shout out to our own HART Board member, Director Gary Hartfield, on the induction into the 2024 class of Tampa Bay Business Hall of Fame. This prestigious honor is bestowed by the Florida Council of Economic Education, recognizes individuals who have made remarkable contributions to the Tampa Bay community through their outstanding business accomplishments and unwavering commitment to civic service. Congratulations.
Way to go. And I know Director Hartfield is also, are you giving the keynote address at George Edgecombe Bar Association?
Yes.
Man, I tell you, we're with somebody. Good for you. That's a big deal. That's awesome. And I see Board Director Williams has her hand up.
I actually was giving a thumbs up to Director Hartfield for his recognition. I also wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate Mr. Drainville, CEO Drainville, and his team. I know it's April 1st, but just looking back at the Transportation Appreciation Month, I mean, a number of events that took place to show the employees how much they are appreciated and the level of pride that they had for the employees that we're seeing. I mean, Commissioner Myers and yourself, Chairman Vera, as well as Director Knight and a number of others who participate during the month outside of the board meetings and spend time with the employees. They really appreciate that time that's spent and to showcase the training as well as the ability to ask questions and then the understanding of what's happening outside of what they do so they can take it back and apply it to what they do every day. And so the pride and appreciation for being a transportation worker is certainly profound. and it was, we were able to see that, and that recognition was just, just very, very rewarding to see there and with the employees. And I wanted to take the opportunity to again say thank you, for all the work that Mr. Dreamville and his leadership team does with his employees.
Sorry.
Really experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I thought you were finished, Director Williams. Thank you very much, ma'am. Anyone else? Commissioner Myers, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, too, would like to thank HART for participating in Women History Month. And Carla Williams, we had a very successful event at Greater Bethel Missionary Baptist Church. My second point is I want to bring to our attention again, in particular, CEO Drainville regarding the bus shelters in my district. I brought this item up 6 months ago or 7 months ago, about not having shelters in District 3. We do not have enough as we are approaching the summer months. I do not want to see people continue to stand on hot days in my district waiting for a bus. And at the next meeting, CEO Drainville, can you give us an update to tell us how many shelters would be placed on bus, or do you need to buy right away? But the issue need to be addressed, and I'm looking forward for hearing it at the next month's meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? And it's funny, Commissioner, because I was going to, I guess I'll jump into my chair's report. I was going to mention actually the bus shelters, because I am on April 11th going to be asking CRA staff if CRA can help fund some of those bus shelters and other improvements, if it is legally feasible, which I think it is, but well, I'll defer to the attorney. So I am going to be motioning for that on April 11th. So hopefully that can give some help to the CRA areas, including East Tampa and different areas. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say that as well. Two things, if I may. I wanted to thank the folks from the ADA committee who were here. I know Scott Greenblatt was here. Marion was here, is here. I see him still here. And Mary, we had a meeting with Mr. Drainville, myself, and staff, and we appreciate everybody's input. And we're working to make sure that we, continue to move forward on HART with accessibility. It is April 1st. It's Autism Awareness Month, and Arizona is, of course, here. Mr. Jenkins is here, and thank you, sir. It's Autism Awareness Month, and we want to make sure that we move forward on all different kinds of varying exceptionalities and needs, et cetera, for HART, and that includes those who are visually impaired. We are going to be having a community meeting with a local organization on that issue, and I will be attending the next ADA committee. I have to do it virtually, unfortunately, because it's Thursday at City Council. I think it's at 1:30 or so. Yeah, it's about 1:30 or so I'll be there. So we usually get out of City Council about 11:30 at night, so I'll just leave in the middle of it. I'm joking. But I wanted to thank everybody for that. We appreciate y'all. And lastly, and I spoke to our wonderful CEO, Scott Drainville, on this, which is May 18th is going to be the 5-year anniversary of the death, the murder of Thomas Dunn, who was our HART worker. And I had spoken to HART, and I know they're very supportive of it, of doing something for Mr. Dunn. Maybe, and again, I'll leave it up to staff. I don't want to come up with ideas, renaming something, whatever it may be, for the memory of Mr. Dunn. I mean, in his final acts, he was in terrible pain that would lead to his death, and he saved lives. I mean, that guy, he was a remarkable man, and we always have to remember his name. I know he was an Air Force veteran and was very, very active in trying to improve things for workers, and so I know we'll do that. And I'm not going to do a motion, but I know we've talked about that, so we can work on that together. Any comments or questions? Okay. Next, we move to our General Counsel's report.
Thank you and good morning. The two items under the General Counsel report are items that are moving forward from a workshop item and also from a committee item, so I'll take the first one first. You may recall that on February 19th, 2024, you held a workshop relating to the governance and operational management report that came out of FDOT, and you had presentations by Lisa Bascott from the Florida Public Transportation Association, as well as Aaron Franklin, who's the Associate Vice President from Michael Baker International, who's responsible for that report. As you know, as part of your workshop, you cannot take a formal action, but there was a discussion of of moving this to the full board for any additional discussion and any action you might take. One of the actions that you could take is to make the request that both staff and Mr. Dranville and General Counsel proceed forward with any necessary changes for our board policies to implement any of the changes. We're working on the board policies anyway. They will be implemented, but if you wanted to take that type of formal action, you can. Otherwise, I leave it to you all to have any further discussion you might have, and this would be an opportunity for you to take an action as part of the review of that work from FDOT.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
And is there any action that you wanted to take as you move this item forward to the board, since you couldn't take action at your workshop?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess because there was a lot during that workshop, if we made a motion for you to take board action I mean, I don't want us to say to take, if we say take action, you're going to come back to us with your recommendations consistent with
Yes.
FDOT's, okay.
And in fact, we're really already doing that as part of our review of your board policies. The first board policy that we have been working on is something that's been kind of outstanding for a period of time, which you've already moved forward to committee, which is the general counsel policy. But but as part of the FDOT report and some of the operation and management items that were brought forward as part of that, not the revenue side, because I know there's a lot about the revenue side, but the process side, we're utilizing those recommendations and we'll be bringing those forward to you. The way your policy manual revisions process works, first we bring the item to the full board, describe what those changes are going to be, then we ask for the board to move that to committee. There's a hearing at one of your committees, and then it comes back to you, full board for a second hearing for final adoption. But we were already looking at those policies anyway, but we're really also kind of looking at the way FDOT characterized some of these issues and making sure we're going to be consistent with that. You can take it as an action since you did move it forward as part of your workshop. I don't know that you need that action for us to take that into consideration, as that's our intent.
Yeah, and I think then it's logical. I know some other board members want to speak, but I'll make that motion to move this forward for you all to bring back to us those recommendations consistent with our workshop meeting and FDOT's recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Wosel, and then Board Member Knight. Go ahead, sir.
And I'll second it, and I see that the next item is process for HART charter amendments, and, one of the big recommendations was potential restructuring of the governing board. I've articulated this in the past. Since 2021, Hillsborough County government has been shorted one local appointee representative seat as dictated by our own policies by population. So I just want to hear what ones are easier to accomplish, the process, what ones were more difficult. I want to take on those more difficult amendments. I think that now is the time, and I just look forward to seeing what council brings. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks for the great meeting. Just like to piggyback a little on Director Myers in the bus stopping information, and also to everything that's come our way, including the information. I know it was short, but between the chair and CEO, try to look in this and give us some more results on it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? And Director Williams, do you have your hand up by any chance?
I don't. I'll take it down.
Okay, no, cool. Just making sure I don't overlook you, ma'am. Okay, now we have a motion by County Commissioner Owen, seconded by County Commissioner Wosel. Please, roll call.
Director Cameron Cepeda?
Yes.
Director Hartfield?
Yes.
Director Henderson?
Yes.
Director Knight?
Yes.
Director King?
Yes.
Director Mechanic?
Yes.
Director Myers?
Yes.
Director Owen?
Yes.
Director Schisler?
Yes.
Chair Vieira?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
Director Wolstel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Anything else, Ms. Mandel?
Yes, thank you. I have a second item, which is a discussion on the process for HART charter amendments. And while we've discussed at length your policy manual and that process, there hasn't been as robust of a discussion of the amendments process for your charter. I want to start with the fact that your charter, the last time it was amended and restated was 1980. It has been in that same format since 1980. In the ad hoc committee for revenue, one of the conversations that that committee was having related to the millage rate that HART is limited to. It is limited by your charter. Your charter provides specifically a limitation of $0.5 mil, up to $0.5 mil for any type of property taxation, which is limited to HART. That is a limitation in your charter. State law allows you to go up to 3 mils. In order for you, and this was a part of the conversation, and we as general counsel reported the process would, to be able to say, increase your property tax rate would be a two-part process. First, you would have to amend the charter and raise that limit past 0.5 mils, and the second would be a referendum to impose the tax. I thought it was important to at least describe that process because we may also be wanting to look at other charter changes because that is a two-tiered process for your millage. But what your charter provides for amendment to your charter is a two-part process in and of itself. The first part is a vote of this board to a majority vote of this board to move forward on any amendments to your charter, whether it be the millage rate or any of the other provisions. And the second part of that process is a majority vote of approval in the 3 jurisdictions which are part of this organization, City of Temple Terrace, City of Tampa, and Hillsborough County. So while you have complete and utter control over your policies, for the purposes of changing the charter, it is a two-part process. First, this board, and then that goes to each one of the boards for acceptance. For the change to a millage, the first part would be changing your charter. The second part would be then putting that on a referendum at a general election for the purposes of allowing the electorate to weigh in on whether or not that property tax change could occur. And it may be that part of this process, and I think the ad hoc revenue committee believed that part should be discussed as it related to ad valorem, but perhaps there should be also a more significant, robust conversation about your charter as a whole and whether or not there's other changes that need to be made in what's in there. Those changes would have to be consistent with state law and would have to be consistent with what we have in Hillsborough County. But that is a document that hasn't, like I said, been touched since 1980. And it may be ripe for a refresh on a variety of issues, such as the issue that Commissioner Wastel brought up, or any of these other issues, including revenue generation through property tax. So I'll leave that for your discussion. Mr. Director Schischler is the chair of that committee, so he may have some other comments and thought processes on that.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Schischler, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Julie, for the summary. As the ad hoc committee has been meeting for roughly 6 months now, and we've come back with some issues, items, recommendations, however you want to classify them. I'd like to make that as a formal presentation to a subsequent board meeting, not necessarily today, but so that everybody's on the same page of what some of the things we discussed. But basically, in a nutshell, we've been reviewing short-term requirements and long, short-term being getting HART back to pre-COVID service levels, as well as the pre-Mission Max service levels, to give our residents the level of service that they need to utilize our system. And then setting up long-term goals for future HART growth and allowing us to maximize the formula of the formula funding that will carry us into the future. We've looked at a bunch of options, but the bottom line is, no matter what option we look at, we got to come back to changing the charter. there's got to be an amended, there's got to be a way to modify the charter, and be it for, whether it was CIT inclusion, ad valorem tax issues, creative allocation mix between city and state funding, city and county use, or the CRA, we still have to come back to change the charter. So what we were hoping to accomplish today was to at least establish charter review group, I don't know, what do you want to call it, how do you want to classify it, so that we could move forward with that and address the additional issues. 1980 was a long time ago. There's a lot of things that have come up that I'm sure would, a review of the total charter would allow us to address some of these issues going forward. That would be my recommendation at this point.
Are you making that into a motion, or?
I'd like to make that into a
There you go.
motion.
We have a motion by Councilman Schisler. Do we have a second and further discussion?
Second.
Okay, a discussion. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned in us making a springboard into more taxation upon the residents of Hillsborough County. We're in the midst of CIT discussions. The school board, I think tomorrow, is speaking about trying to raise the millage rate. I understand we have to find funding sources, but I guess this is just for a presentation, correct? It's not necessarily for us to get in the weeds, but I guess I do want to caution the board on us joining that fray of more taxation on the folks of Hillsborough County. So I just want to throw that out there before this kind of begins. But if it's just to receive some type of presentation on these matters and updating the charter, obviously I will support it, but I just want to throw that caveat out there right now. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Draysville, how many more mills does HART need to be sustainable?
Well, what I could say is, if, with looking at the current revenues, if we were at 0.7 mils, with the current revenue right now, they would add another 36 million. We need another 25 million to get pre-COVID. So for a long-term solution, it'd have to be almost double the ad valorem for a long-term solution. And these are the figures I have now. If you looked at an increase of 1 mil, that would put us at, with current tax revenues, would put us at 145 million. But as a long-term solution, the millage rate would have to be increased significantly for any long-time solution.
Right now, in the city of Tampa, the average home compared to the average salary, 10% of the median household income is someone's property tax. Their annual median household income, 10% off the top goes towards their current property taxes. They hover somewhere close around 20 total mills in the city of Tampa. I think average home, 350,000 minus homestead. The total mills comes out to about $6,000 a year off the top of an invisible tax. That's 10% of the average household median income in the city of Tampa. I believe that it would be highly inappropriate. You've got the school board debating, I think, tomorrow. They want to take more. We just had a county commissioner last year try to increase everyone's mill, everyone's property taxes, another mill. I mean, somewhere soon you're going to be taking 15% of everyone's average median income off the top in invisible tax just for trying to own a home. You're talking about you want to talk about the most unaffordable housing move that you could probably take. That's a hot button slogan that's used, affordable housing. Property taxes increase the unaffordability of homes. Why haven't we, and I don't know that we ever have, and Holland and Knight is here, they're our lobbyists, right? I would like to know, have you ever heard of a city working with the state's legislature to allow only an incorporated city to pass a localized sales tax to subsidize their transportation needs?
I have not. I've heard it discussed. Excuse me. I've heard it discussed. I'm not educated on whether it has been permitted or it has not been permitted, but it's certainly something that Julia and I could collaborate on getting an answer to, and maybe Julia knows.
I have a little bit of background on that issue from several years ago. I know that right now, it is not allowed, and I think everybody's aware of it. It has to be countywide. I know that, I want to say 5 years ago, there was some discussions about whether or not that was something to move forward through the state legislature, the process for that, which I'm not familiar with as much either. But that never went anywhere. Is that something that could be discussed? I don't think there's a legal prohibition to changing the way the legislation is written, but that is something that would obviously have to come through the state legislature, and I think I don't know I don't know if it would be something you would need to discuss with the municipalities first before you could bring it forward, and whether or not they have any interest in proceeding forward with that.
I think right now that there's already local surtax options under 212.055 that exist that are only triggered by a population requirement of that local jurisdiction. I think that there's an opportunity that exists for us to go after ones that are triggered. If we went after a incorporated city population of 300,000 or more, that would only allow 4 current cities in the entire state of Florida to go after that. The messaging is that the highest percentage of localized sales tax is something my office has already been working on trying to figure out with the state's Department of Revenue is how much of a percentage of the Hillsborough County 1 cent SERS tax, half-cent sales taxes that are out there, how much of it is actually captured within the municipalities of the local incorporated areas? The reason I bring this up, and it's not to exclude Temple Terrace, and I'm sure that there's interlocal agreements that can exist to be worked out to provide service, but right now, we've had many discussions, and I just want us to have an honest conversation. We've had many discussions where we've acknowledged in this very boardroom that the highest percentage of service that we offer right now is in the city of Tampa. And that even with a doubling of our local millage rate, we wouldn't realistically be able to offer some huge expansion of service into the 70% of the population that lives in unincorporated. Is that fair, even if we doubled the millage rate?
Well, I would depend on the COA to figure out what justifies the ridership in what areas.
Right, and what areas might possibly, which we know doesn't exist, have the density to justify such a thing. We have routes that are going to irresponsibly, in my opinion, still going to Fishhawk and Riverview that have single-digit ridership that go from there all the way down to MacDill Air Force Base. I can't imagine the loss of overhead that's occurring from those routes and why this board doesn't take action on consolidating some of those things to make us more efficient for the people that actually do ride it and have access to it and depend on it the most. I think that the right action for us is not to go after some regressive property tax increase, that if this board moved forward with a 1 cent option sales tax for populations of cities over 300,000, I personally would go and advocate for our state leadership on making that an option. This is not the 1980s or 90s. We've had record high in-migration to these areas, including our own jurisdiction. It probably didn't make sense then. It might make sense now. And I believe that that's the much more viable solution. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Go ahead, sir. And then Councilman.
And I want to piggyback off, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think we all know up here, everybody up here understands the delicate time we are in with the CIT as well on the county commission side, which obviously impacts the cities. All 3 mayors came and spoke about the importance of the CIT. So we are in discussions with that on the language on how we're going to frame that. But the reason I am saying this is the same thing I shot across the bow to the school board, is that putting other referendums onto a ballot this year, I think drowns out the ballot and makes it more difficult for the CIT to pass. So I'll say that here again to this board as well. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman.
Yes, thank you. A couple points of clarification. Number one, this is never intended to be done this year. The charter review had to happen first. This is never intended to be done in 2024 as far as any kind of tax impact. The presentation, which was going to be made at a future date, also included research into the city option We've discussed that with Julia, and we'd already discussed that with, who was there? Who was on that conference? Was it Holland and Knight? We were talking about this specifically, doing
I believe
the
it
specific
was.
to the city. I can't remember which group.
I'm sorry, I can't remember either.
But we've already put our foot into this pool to try and figure out, we're not just saying it's got to be ad valorem or nothing. We're looking for anything that can stick on the wall is what we're trying to do, including service changes. But we can't do anything until we can change the charter. We can't start talking about it until we get something set up to start reviewing it.
If I could just take a moment to clarify something, because of what Commissioner Wassel said and Director Schizler, there's two separate parts of this. One is a sales tax, and whether or not under state law you can do a sales tax for transportation wholly within a municipality. You cannot, under the way the state law reads right now. Under your charter, there is language that does potentially allow, it's not the clearest language in the world, but language that does potentially allow the municipalities to put in place through a referendum process, a property, an increased mill. If you were to change the mill from 0.5, there may be an opportunity for that increase in property tax to only be implemented in the cities. It's, as I said, this was written very many years ago. It's not the clearest language, but it's something that we can also look at as opposed to a sales tax. But I think what I hear maybe needs to occur is you don't have a process for a charter review in your charter, some charters do, but there may be not a bad idea to have that conversation and look at your charter and see what changes would be appropriate given its age and also some of these funding issues.
Thank you, ma'am. Board Member Hartfield, and then Board Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. With the comments that's been made as it relates to the property tax issue, that is certainly a concern here in the state. However, I think a more overwhelming concern is the cost of property insurance. I've seen that become a very serious issue for people. So as we talk about property tax, insurance has to be an integral part of that conversation as we look at a larger problem. What I've seen historically for the city of Tampa, when then Mayor Martinez was mayor, he was able to reduce the millage for property taxes. So as an integral part of our conversation, I don't want our conversation to be unilateral in that we're maybe considering an increase in sales or property taxes. I would think that we have the ability not only if there's a need to increase it, but also to ask staff to seriously consider ways to reduce that millage back down to an acceptable rate.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
When is the deadline to provide Holland and Knight our next year's legislative agenda? I know that there's not a time too soon. When do we normally do that?
So the legislature will start in March this coming year. So I would suggest if we're building that with some initial staff work in the month of August, September, and then we bring it to you, developed for approval, input, September, October, and we're ready to go in November, December, because that would be, you want to be done and ready to implement no later than December 1st would be my recommendation, best practices on that regard.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Director King.
Leaving aside the issue of the ad valorem tax and the millage rate increase, what other charter amendments might we be anticipating?
I mean, does anyone want to speak to that, or counsel?
I'll just speak to that just to say, I think in looking at your charter, it's just been a long time since it's been looked at, so I can't answer that question right now. I think that, if you're inclined to have some review of it, that would be a valuable opportunity. to see other items in there. In fact, I hadn't looked at it in a very long time, and through this process, started looking at it again, and, I mean, some of just the nomenclature and the way it's written doesn't even line up with your board policies. So there's probably just some cleanup work that may be necessary. And going through some kind of review and almost going through it, section by section, could be a valuable opportunity to see, especially if we're going to implement the FDOT provisions, where those things need to also be adjusted in your charter. And because of the process, which requires not just an action of this board, but an action of the other jurisdictions, that would allow some additional conversations with all those jurisdictions as well.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to get some sort of clarification as to what we have in mind. If it's a housekeeping agenda, that's one thing, but if there's specific constructive changes that are of some substantial nature, we probably need to know, what those are up front.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you. To your point, and to Ms. Mandel's point, it's been 43 years since we've looked at it. 44 years. Who knows? I mean, Commissioner Wastel has the point about the population allocations for membership. These are important things that, we got to take a look at it. We don't know what we're missing necessarily. So, and it's never going to happen until we get started.
I don't disagree. I just know that once you start down this road, you might be opening up Pandora's box.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, before we vote on a motion by Councilman Schisler, I believe seconded by Board Member Hartfield, if I recall, just give my thoughts very briefly. On millage rate, obviously, if you read the paper, City of Tampa had a very robust discussion on our millage rate. We had a proposed 15% millage rate that I voted against, and then I proposed scaling it back. I think it was 80%, and having that additional dedicated revenue source going to police officers and firefighters to help them out, because I think in the city we're running way back on that. My point is, I've never been afraid to ask people for more, but there's always a time and a place, and you've got to have a good dedicated reason to do so. I was glad to take a political hit for cops and firefighters, right? You take political hits if you're doing the right thing, and we all interpret that as we do. I did want to thank everybody. Everybody gave really good thoughts, especially I wanted to thank Board Member and Councilman Schisler, who just always such an invaluable part of this board, and he's doing a great job there talking about different choices that we can have going forward. The way I see this motion, this is just about a dialogue on the future of HART and the options that we have, and that's it. We're not supporting something or opposing. We're just going to be talking about the future and different ways that we can get additional funds. I've spoken about additional revenue for HART ever since I became chair when it comes to things like the millage, et cetera, which is that before we formally go to the voters and do that, we have to make sure that we continue to win their trust on issues of transparency for HART. We all, I think, agree on that. And that's, by the way, something that I think we've gone miles forward on. But having a discussion on that, when you take a look at the needs of HART, right, there are many, many avenues that we can go to get additional funds, and I think we should discuss everything, again, without endorsing anything by voting for this motion as far as I'm concerned. Where it lands, that'll be with the board as far as I'm concerned. And again, nothing for this election, as the Council Member Schisler wisely said. So just my thoughts.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess my issue with it is just we're spreading out a little further than I thought. We were focused on the FDOT report.
Yeah.
And I guess my other caution would be to how the legislature looks at us as we look at a bigger picture and possibly increasing taxes.
Sure.
So I think that we could very easily get off on a tangent to where this could end up backfiring on us. So I just want to be conscious of that, everyone to be conscious of that as a board. So thank you.
And Board Member Myers, go ahead.
Thank you. In listening to the recommendation from Councilman Schisler, it was a presentation, and we got off on the wrong steps. If the presentation comes back to this board, then we have the opportunity to have a better dialogue in which direction we want to go. So I'm going to support the motion because it's just only bringing it back a presentation to us. It doesn't say it now whether what we're going to vote, what the state is going to do, what the county is going to do, or the city. It's just to allow a presentation to come back and be presented, and then we have more discussion on the direction we want the board to take. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And Board Member Schuster, do you mind restating your motion? Because Board Member Owen said something wise, which is we want to make sure that what we're voting on is narrowly tailored to a presentation. Do you mind doing that?
Well, the motion that I was trying to make was the establishment of a charter review committee, whatever, so that we can review the particulars of the charter. It's 43 years, or 44 years. Don't know where it's going to go, don't know how it's going to end up, but it's long due for a review. And this is just the establishment of that so that we can discuss the different provisions of it, either being revenue generation or governance or policies that need to come out of it, cleaning up of language and so forth.
Great. And was there also and that contemplates a presentation as well?
Well, there'll be a separate, there's two presentations that be had, obviously. One is the ad hoc revenue generation, or alternate revenue committee. That's going to be relatively soon. And then the second would be the recommendations of the charter review committee to the full board as to what it recommends needs to be put forward.
Great.
So there'd be two presentations, one for a vote, one for just general knowledge as to what we found.
Thank you, sir. And sir, does your second still stand, I assume?
It does.
Okay, great. Any further discussion before we take a vote? Okay, roll call, please.
Director Cameron Cepeda?
No.
Director Hartfield?
Yes.
Director Henderson?
No.
Director King?
Yes.
Director Knight? Director Mechanic?
Yes.
Director Myers?
Yes.
Director Owen?
No.
Director Schisler?
Yes.
Chair Vieira?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
And Director Wolstel?
No.
The motion passes 7-4.
Thank you very much. Any further comments from board members? Okay, thank you very much for that robust discussion and whatnot. Next is the HART committee reports are included in the packet under Section 9. Reports from HART board member representatives are in Section 10. Information reports are in Section 11. Is there any old business? Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the public comment this morning from John Green, a former driver, CEO Hartfield, can you bring us a report back at the next month's meeting addressing his concerns that was addressed at this morning's meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anything else? Okay. Any new business? Okay, so if I may, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, for all your comments and helpful discussions. Thank you. And I hope everyone who celebrated had a happy Easter. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I just responded to Charbelle's text. I don't want to do it during the meeting. Are you still good today?
That was correct. I was texting.
Okay, good.